Hey there, this is Dr. Madhuri Goswami, Associate Professor of English, Government Girls College, Churmu, Jaipur, Rajasthan, India. In today's lesson, I'm going to talk about active and passive voice. That's really a very important topic in English grammar. So, when we talk about active and passive voice, the first question in your mind would be, what is voice? We take up the word literal meaning. Its literal meaning is call. And actually this word has been taken up from the Latin language, and the root word is there vocem. That means call. But in traditional grammar, what is voice? That's important to understand. This voice is actually related to the verb, or we can say it is a feature or it's a quality of a verb that indicates whether its subject acts or is acted upon. So there might be two situations in a sentence. In one situation, the subject acts, and in the another one, the subject is acted upon. So when the subject acts, the voice of the sentence is active, and when the subject is acted upon, its voice is passive. Or in other words, we can say the voice of a verb describes the relationship between the action, that is verb, and the participants, that is subject of that sentence. So I hope it's quite clear what is the voice. In traditional grammar, it is a feature of the verb that tells us about the subject and its being active or passive. Now let me tell you a very important fact about active voice and passive voice. Actually, these are two voices, and a transitive verb has these two voices, active voice and passive voice. In a way, we can say that if you want to change a sentence from active voice to passive voice, then you must have a transitive verb that takes up an object after it compulsorily. So this is a transitive verb. A transitive verb is required to change from active voice to passive voice. Another fact is that the subject is the agent or doer of the action. In this case, the verb is in the active voice. When the subject is not the doer, not the agent of the action, then that verb is in the passive voice. I hope this chart would define active voice and passive voice quite clearly, and it will give you the difference between these two voices. Active, when we talk about active voice, where we find the focus is on what the subject does. But in passive, the focus is on the action. So, for example, in the sentences you can see Ram killed Ravan. Ram is the subject and the subject is active. It's the doer, it's the agent. Ravan is receiving that action. Killed, this verb gives us the action. Passive voice, Ravan was killed by Ram. In the second sentence, Ravan is not the doer. The subject is here passive. So the voice of this sentence is passive. It's also very important to know why passive voice. When we can express the same idea, the same statement, the same fact in the active voice, then why should we use passive voice? Yes, we can use this passive voice while writing a report or giving something in which you are writing with detaching yourself. You are giving something very objective. When the speaker focuses on the receiver, then the passive voice is used in that sentence. For example, he sent the letter. Here he is the agent, he is the doer, sent is the action, and the letter is the receiver. But now it's important to tell that the letter was sent. Then we will use the passive voice. When the agent is unknown or less important, then also we use the passive voice. For example, let's have a look on these sentences. Somebody has stolen my wallet. Here the speaker doesn't know who has stolen his wallet. So it's better to say, my wallet has been stolen. Now you can pause the video and try to compare the following sentences. I'm reading those sentences aloud for you. The dog chased the cat. The cat was chased by the dog. In these two sentences, in the first sentence, the dog is the subject and it is active. In the second sentence, the cat was chased by the dog. The cat is the subject and it is passive. Now let's have a look on the steps which you need to follow while changing from the active voice to the passive voice. The first thing is that you need to identify SVO in the sentence. S stands for subject, V stands for verb, and O stands for object. This is the basic sentence structure which you must have studied earlier also. But here the verb should be the transitive verb as we have discussed earlier also. Now let's take up the example. The mechanic repaired the car. In this sentence, the mechanic is the subject, the word repaired is the verb, and the car is an object. Now in this lesson we will discuss three important rules which are really applied while changing from active voice to passive voice. The rule number 1 is the object in the active voice becomes the subject in the passive voice. Let's understand it by the example of these two sentences. The mechanic repaired the car. This sentence is an active voice, so the object of this sentence, the car, it will become the subject of the sentence in passive voice. So the car was repaired by the mechanic. And the rule number 2 for changing from active voice to passive voice is if the agent is prominent in the passive voice. If the speaker wants to tell about the agent also in the passive voice, then there would be preposition by. It would be used before the object of the passive. Let's understand it by the examples given here. He feeds his dog in the morning. This is an active voice. So the subject in active voice is he. It becomes the object of the passive voice, and when it goes there, its objective form is written like he becomes him. And before him, we use preposition by. Now let us know about the rule number 3. We can say the passive form takes an appropriate tense of the verb be, followed by the past participle of the main verb. The tense remains the same as in the active voice. There would be no change in tense, but there would be change in the form of the verb. And this change would be, whatever the tense it is, the change would be like to be plus third form of the main verb. That is also known as the past participle. Suppose in the present simple tense, this be form would be used in the form of is, am, are according to the subject, and the past participle of the main verb would be used. For example, his dog is fed by him in the morning. He feeds his dog in the morning. This is the sentence in the active voice. When we will change it into passive voice, this verb feeds, it will be changed, its form will be changed, and it will become is fed. Why is? Because the subject here is his dog, and that is a singular one. So with singular subjects we use is, with the first person we use am, with second person and with plural we use are. So his dog is fed by him in the morning. This verb form is changed. Here is a table given for your help that will guide you how to change the form of the verb from active voice to passive voice. The first form of the verb, or do or does, it would change the form of be is, am, are, and they are used according to the number of subjects and the third form of the main verb. Whatever is the tense, the main verb, the third form of the main verb would be used. There would be no change in tense, but there would be the change in the form of the verb according to the table given in this slide. Well, I hope you must have understood what is active voice and what is passive voice and why and how the active voice